13 years ago, when Laurel and I stood in front of that courthouse in Phoenix exchanging vows, I didn't picture anything extravagant, just years of steady, quiet life together. And for the most part, that's exactly what we had. I worked my way up to senior project manager at a civil engineering firm here in Flagstaff, while Laurel built a modest freelance career in marketing. We made enough to afford our house in the Pines, 2 cars, and the occasional trip to Santa Fe or Sedona. No children, not by choice exactly, but after 2 miscarriages the trying stopped. We grieved in our own ways and carried on. Our routines were comforting. I was out the door by 7, back by 6, with Laurel usually sitting at the dining table, tapping away on her laptop, her hair pulled back, music humming low in the background. We'd cook together sometimes, sit on the porch in silence as the wind passed through the ponderosas. I thought that kind of ease was something to protect something rare. I didn't realize it might also be something she'd come to resent. It started with a sentence dropped like a coin on a hardwood floor, small but loud in the stillness of a Monday night. She looked at me from across the kitchen island and said, "I feel like I'm disappearing." I didn't know what to say. She was still Laurel, still sharp, funny, self-possessed. She had her friends, her projects, her yoga retreats. I asked her what she meant, and she gave me a shrug. I need to do something that feels like me again, something bold. At first it was subtle. She started coming home later blaming traffic or last-minute client calls. She signed up for a spin class downtown and began going out afterward with a woman named Siobhan I'd never heard of before. She stopped joining me for our Saturday morning hikes, said she needed her own space. I respected that. I tried not to ask too many questions. Then, one Thursday night, she came through the door around 11, laughing into her phone. Her cheeks were flushed eyes bright like I hadn't seen in months. She kissed me on the head and walked straight past. I noticed the perfume first, something floral but heavy, not the lavender she used to wear. The next morning I saw it, just above the line of her collarbone in fresh black script that curled with intention, "Independent Girl." The skin around it was still slightly red, tender-looking. She caught me staring and tilted her chin up with a half-smile. "Do you like it?" I didn't know what to say. I nodded because it was easier than asking the real question burning in my chest. She turned and poured herself coffee like nothing had changed, but everything had. I didn't know what was coming next, only that I'd stopped recognizing the woman standing across from me in our kitchen. It wasn't just the perfume. It was the way she walked in like she didn't live here anymore. Laurel used to toss her bag on the counter and kick off her shoes before greeting me with a tired but familiar smile. Now, she came home, dressed like she was auditioning for someone else's life, heels too tall for a Tuesday night lipstick, too dark perfume, too strong. She moved through the house like a guest, not a partner, and she barely looked me in the eye. I told myself not to make it into something. People change, styles shift. Maybe she really was just reinventing herself. But it was hard to ignore the timing, the tattoo, the new wardrobe, the late nights. The way she called me predictable, like it was a flaw. "You always have to know what's next," she'd said a few nights ago when I asked what time she'd be back. It's exhausting. What was exhausting was pretending I didn't notice. One afternoon I got a notification from the credit card app. It wasn't uncommon groceries, gas, sometimes Starbucks, but this one stuck out. $237 at a restaurant we'd never been to. I opened the transaction. 2 entrees, cocktails, a bottle of wine. A date night for someone, but not with me. That same evening, while she was in the shower, I hesitated at the sight of her purse on the kitchen chair. For 13 years I'd respected her privacy. But something in me had shifted. I reached in. The receipt was there, crumpled like it meant nothing. Beneath it, a black business card, Ink House Tattoo Collective. A time and date were scrawled in pen. The same afternoon, she'd said she was meeting a new client for a brainstorming session. My stomach turned, not just from what I found, but from how easily I found it. No effort to hide it, no password protection or locked drawers. Either she didn't think I'd look, or she didn't care if I did. That night she curled up next to me on the couch with a glass of wine and asked if I wanted to watch something. I said I had work to catch up on. She shrugged and pressed play on her show anyway. Her laughter rang out as some character did something ridiculous on screen. I sat beside her trying to remember the last time we'd laughed at the same thing. I couldn't. When she got up to refill her glass, I watched her move through the kitchen like she owned it alone. I noticed her phone light up on the counter, an unsaved number, a heart emoji in the preview. She turned the screen face down without hesitation. I stared at the television but heard none of it. Something darker was unfolding beneath the surface, and I had a feeling it was only just beginning. Laurel didn't bother explaining anymore. She'd stopped offering excuses the way someone stops waving away a bad smell. They just get used to it. When I asked about the $800 charge on our joint account, she rolled her eyes and said, "Wardrobe refresh. It's part of the new branding I'm doing for myself." Branding. Like she was a product now. I tried to keep my voice steady. "You didn't think we should talk about it first?" She actually laughed. "Talk about what, Caleb? It's not like we're broke. God, you treat money like it's sacred." I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I looked at the transaction again, scrolling past high-end retailers, salon appointments, boutique wine shops, all within the last 3 weeks. All on the same card. That night, while she was out at another industry mixer, I dug deeper. I hadn't planned to. I'd intended to go to bed, maybe get some rest, but curiosity doesn't sleep when trust starts slipping. I logged into our credit account and found new activity I didn't recognize. Then I saw a new account under her name only, but the minimum payments were being made from ours. She had opened at least 2 cards I hadn't known about, racked up thousands, and was quietly siphoning from our shared finances to keep them afloat. I moved on to her phone records, then our email inbox. I started cross-referencing dates, locations, charges. A pattern emerged. One hotel name came up twice, once on a Thursday afternoon, then again the following Monday. Spa treatments billed to our card, but never discussed. A steakhouse downtown neither of us had ever visited together, yet there it was, 4 times in a month. And then the Range Rover. It was our neighbor Cliff who first mentioned it offhand while we were chatting near the mailbox. "Saw Laurel getting dropped off last night, nice white Range Rover. Thought you'd upgraded." I hadn't. We drove a Subaru. Later that evening, I waited until Laurel had gone to bed before sitting down with her phone bill again. There was one number that stood out: frequent calls around noon, texts sent late at night, always just after she'd returned from one of her events. I ran a reverse lookup. Mason Heller, her boss. I remembered him from her company's holiday party the year before. Tall, polished, expensive watch. Too many compliments. Too long a handshake. I sat back in the chair, the screen light washing over the kitchen counter, her wine glass still half full beside the sink. I hadn't confronted her yet. I didn't know if I was ready to. But the shape of the truth was forming, and it was sharp. The next morning, when she waltzed into the kitchen humming, I looked at her and didn't see my wife. I saw someone rehearsing a part she no longer believed in. I smiled like I didn't know. Like I hadn't already begun planning my exit. I didn't yell, I didn't confront, I didn't even flinch. I just made an appointment. Erica Mendez's office was tucked in a quiet corner of downtown Flagstaff. Sleek, understated, the kind of place where everything felt controlled, precise. She listened without interrupting as I laid it all out: the tattoo, the credit cards, the hotel stays, the late nights, and Mason Heller. I told her everything I'd uncovered, every receipt and text and unexplained charge. When I finished, she sat back, hands folded. "You have grounds," she said. "Adultery, financial misconduct, unauthorized debt. But if you want to do this right cleanly, you need to let her keep believing you're still asleep." That's how Operation Independence began. I started by opening a new personal account at a bank across town. I calculated exactly how much of our joint savings had come from my income documenting deposits and transfers. I didn't touch a dollar more than my share. I scheduled the transfer for the following week, just before she was due to leave on another one of her weekend retreats. Next, I secured a short-term lease on a furnished condo overlooking Walnut Canyon. 1 bedroom, simple, quiet. I paid the deposit in cash from a separate savings account she didn't know existed. At night, I sat at my computer after she fell asleep, organizing digital copies of statements, screenshots of messages, and photos of hotel receipts. It was clinical, methodical. There was comfort in the structure. Then came Danielle. It took 3 days of digging before I found her. Mason's wife. She ran a design firm in Sedona, elegant, efficient, and as it turned out, more aware than I expected. When I called, she asked to meet. We sat across from each other at a wine bar halfway between our cities. She didn't cry, she didn't shout, she just listened. "I've had my suspicions," she said, "but thank you for confirming them." I showed her the photos, the hotel charges, the dates. She nodded, already planning. We agreed to coordinate serve papers the same week, freeze accounts, cut off access. She wasn't interested in revenge. Like me, she wanted clarity. She wanted out. A few nights later, Laurel came home in a mood chatty light, swinging a bag from some boutique I couldn't pronounce. She poured herself a drink, kissed my cheek like none of it existed, then mentioned something about a spa weekend in Cabo her team was planning. I nodded, said that sounded nice. The next day I reviewed our home equity line of credit and found a new entry. A $15,000 loan. Approved 2 weeks ago. The signature on the application was hers. She'd leveraged the house behind my back. I stared at the document, then closed my laptop slowly, breathing through the heat behind my eyes. She wanted independence. She'd bought it on interest. And she had no idea that when she packed her bag for Cabo, she was walking out for good. She told me she was hosting a networking dinner for a few colleagues from the agency. Just a casual gathering. Nothing fancy, she said while stirring her coffee. "You probably won't want to be around for it, it's mostly marketing talk." I told her I'd stay out of the way. I said it with a straight face, and she didn't question it. Maybe she thought I was finally slipping back into the oblivious husband role. Maybe she wanted me to. At 6:45 that Sunday evening, the doorbell started ringing. By 7, our living room was pulsing with bass laughter and a smell of cologne I hadn't worn in years. I stayed upstairs, door cracked just enough to let the noise drift in. I didn't need to see everything to know exactly what was happening, but I watched anyway. From the top of the stairs, I recorded them. Laurel floated through the room like she'd been waiting her whole life for this kind of attention. Backless dress, glass of champagne in hand. Mason stood too close behind her, a hand occasionally resting on her lower back. They didn't hide it. No one tried to. Our house had become something else entirely, a stage, and I wasn't supposed to be in the audience. It wasn't until I heard the sharp clink of glass, followed by a gasp, that I moved. Someone had knocked over a full glass of red wine onto our white couch, the one we'd saved up for during our 3rd year of marriage. The one she used to joke was too nice for guests. I walked downstairs without a word. The music was loud, the voices louder. No one noticed me until I cut the stereo. The silence hit harder than I expected. People turned confused. Mason's hand dropped from Laurel's waist. She blinked at me like she wasn't sure if I was real. "Party's over," I said. Laurel laughed, but there was a crack in it. "Caleb, come on. Don't make a scene." I looked around the room at the spills, the strangers, the woman who used to be my wife, and then straight at Mason. "You must be Mason. Danielle sends her love." His smirk faltered. Laurel's head whipped toward me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse or plead. I simply turned and walked back upstairs, letting the weight of my words settle where it needed to. 10 minutes later, the house was quiet again. Laurel didn't follow me up. She stayed downstairs, probably replaying every conversation, wondering just how much I knew. I didn't need to wonder anymore. The next morning, she would be on a plane to Cabo, and I would be waiting for her return with everything already in motion. She left on a Friday morning suitcase, rolling behind her sunglasses on, though the sun hadn't yet cleared the rooftops. I carried her bag to the car, opened the trunk, and kissed her cheek like a man still in the dark. "Enjoy the retreat," I said. "Hope it gives you what you're looking for." She smiled like she believed me. By noon, I'd transferred exactly half of our joint savings, calculated down to the cent, excluding every unauthorized withdrawal I could prove. I left her portion untouched, but froze the account from further use. I wasn't taking anything from her. I was just taking back what was mine. I spent the rest of the day severing ties. I removed myself from every shared credit card, closed the ones where I was the primary holder. I canceled my auto payments, transferred my phone line to a separate account, updated my insurance beneficiaries, and left the electric, water, and gas bills in her name. All of them now required deposits. At 5:00 p.m., I handed Erica a manila envelope. Inside were divorce papers filed under grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. She promised Laurel would be served the moment her flight landed back in Arizona. That night I moved into the condo. It wasn't much, but it was mine, paid for clean and quiet. I sat on the balcony with a beer and watched the city move beneath me, each light in the distance, a reminder that life was still happening even while mine had been unraveling in silence. Laurel returned Sunday night. I didn't answer the first call, or the second. By the 6th voicemail, her voice had shifted from annoyed to uncertain. By the 10th, she was panicked. "Where are you? The house? The locks? Caleb? What the hell is going on?" By morning, she was texting in bursts. "I can't access my cards. The utility company says I owe a deposit. I got served papers at the airport. Are you serious?" I waited until after lunch to reply. One message: "You wanted to be independent. Now you are." I turned off my phone after that. By Tuesday, Erica told me Laurel had called her office more than 20 times. Her signature on the loan she'd taken out against the house had opened a new legal angle we could use. Mason, from what Danielle shared, had ghosted her once he realized his wife wasn't bluffing either. Their little fantasy trip to Cabo had cost them both far more than airfare. I heard from Mariah Laurel's sister later that week. A voicemail full of tears and disbelief. "She's sleeping on my couch, Caleb. You really left her with nothing." I didn't call back. She hadn't been left with nothing. She'd been left with exactly what she asked for. I was halfway through organizing the last of my documents when I got the alert Laurel had tried to access the joint account again. This time, she'd triggered a fraud lock. I closed my laptop, leaned back in the chair, and took a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. 6 months passed without a single word between us. I took a new position at a firm based in Sedona, better pay, better hours. I started hiking again, joined a small climbing group that met every Saturday, and cooked real meals instead of eating over the sink. The condo was still quiet, still mine. Some mornings I'd wake up before the sun and sit on the balcony with coffee and no plan. It felt good not to be needed. Then, one Sunday after a long hike along the Rim Trail, I stopped by a local cafe near the square, someplace I hadn't been in years. I was wiping trail dust from my hands when I heard someone say my name, Caleb. I turned and saw her. Laurel stood behind the counter in a black apron, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. The lipstick, the heels, the layers of curated charm were gone. What remained was a woman who looked tired human, and still on her collarbone, just above the seam of her shirt, was the faded outline of that tattoo. Independent girl. "Hi," I said, my voice flat with surprise. She offered a small, cautious smile. "I didn't expect to see you here." I nodded, glanced down at the menu board even though I wasn't reading it. "Just passing through." We stood in that awkward air for a moment. Then she gestured toward a table by the window. "If you have a minute," I sat. She brought over 2 coffees without asking. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, hands wrapped around her mug. "I know that doesn't mean much now, but I am." I didn't rush to fill the silence. I watched her face instead, the way she avoided eye contact, the way her thumb traced the edge of the cup, like she needed something to anchor her. "I believe you," I said finally. "But there's no going back." She nodded. "I know. She told me bits of what had happened. The house was gone foreclosed after the loan defaulted. Mason left her a few weeks after Cabo cut all ties. She'd tried to freelance again, but the clients dried up. The cafe job helped cover rent in a small studio she was sharing with 2 roommates. And the tattoo, I asked, glancing at it. Her hand reflexively moved to cover it. I thought it would mean something different. Now it just reminds me what I broke. We didn't talk long. There wasn't much left to say. Before I stood to leave, she looked at me one last time and asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I already did," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean you get to go back." She didn't argue. She just nodded and said, "Thank you." Outside, the light felt sharper than before. I walked to my car, not angry, not sad, just done. She thought independence meant freedom from me, but real independence was something I gave myself, and for the first time in years I felt entirely free.